What if a story buried for a long time suddenly saw the light of day and challenged a nation's whole identity? For a country like South Korea, which has long drawn strength from the idea of a single, unified people, the thought isn't just a fantasy, it's a challenge. And this isn't a hypothetical. Online, in forums and comment sections, a different version of history is being discussed. As pieces of this lesser-known past go viral, they're sending shockwaves through a society that thought it knew its own story. This is what happens when a hidden history, the story of Black Koreans, is no longer hidden. For generations, the identity of South Korea has been built on a powerful idea: Danilminjok, the concept of an ethnically homogeneous nation. It's a story of a shared heritage that has been a source of immense pride. But what happens when new questions arise? What happens when evidence starts to surface that suggests a history that's far more complex and diverse? The internet has become a new space for this debate, where old texts, forgotten accounts, and viral theories are challenging everything. The story of Korea is usually told through its grand kingdoms and dynasties, but there's another thread woven into this tapestry: the story of Black people in Korea. And as this thread is pulled, it's causing a deep re-evaluation that the nation is now starting to confront. The official story: the idea of Danilminjok. To understand why this is a big deal, you have to understand the idea of Danilminjok. The concept of an ethnic nation wasn't just a casual belief in South Korea. For much of the 20th century, it was the bedrock of national identity. This idea of a unified and distinct Korean people wasn't just a matter of pride, it was a tool for survival. This powerful narrative really took hold in the early 20th century, during a time of national crisis. As imperialist powers threatened the peninsula, and especially during the harsh period of Japanese colonial rule from 1910 to 1945, the idea of a distinct Korean people became a form of resistance. Japan's colonial policy tried to forcibly assimilate Koreans, claiming a common origin but positioning Koreans as subordinate. They suppressed the Korean language, forced people to take Japanese names, and tried to erase a unique Korean identity. In response, Korean nationalist thinkers and historians like the influential Shin Chae-ho fought back with history itself. They framed Korean history as the story of an ethnic nation, Minjok, defined by a shared heritage and spirit, tracing it back to the mythical founder Dangun. The message was powerful: even if our country is occupied, our nation, our Minjok, is an eternal body that can't be broken. After liberation from Japan and the devastating Korean War, this ideology was strengthened. In the mission to rebuild a shattered country and forge a modern state, Danilminjok was promoted to foster unity. It was taught in schools and became part of the collective consciousness, providing a powerful sense of shared destiny. The official story was written: we are one people with a shared heritage, a single nation. For a long time, this was the story of Korea. But every official story has its footnotes, and in the internet age, those footnotes have a way of becoming headlines. The viral theory: the sea ghosts of the Imjin War. The first tremor to challenge this narrative came from an unexpected place: a viral online story about the Imjin War in the late 16th century. This war, a heroic defense against Japanese invasions, is a cornerstone of Korean history. But an online theory based on interpretations of historical records has added a new layer to the story. This now viral narrative pieces together certain accounts to describe a mysterious group of foreign soldiers fighting for Korea. This story claims that Joseon dynasty records, like the Annals of King Seonjo, describe soldiers called Haegwi, or sea ghosts. According to this online theory, the annals describe them as having dark skin and being incredible divers who could sabotage enemy ships from underwater. For centuries, such accounts, to the extent they existed, were historical footnotes at best. But in the modern world, this story has taken on a new, explosive meaning. Online discussions and videos began to frame the Haegwi as definitive proof of an ancient black presence in Korea, suggesting they were African mercenaries brought by the Ming dynasty. However, the historical reality is far from clear. Mainstream academic historians have not confirmed the existence of this unit in the way it's described online, and the origins of any dark-skinned foreigners mentioned in old texts are widely debated. Some scholars suggest they were more likely people from Southeast Asia who were part of the multi-ethnic Ming Empire. There is no academic consensus that they were African. But for a viral story, nuance often gets lost. The idea of ancient sea ghosts defending Korea was too powerful to ignore. It suggested that the Korean peninsula wasn't an isolated island, but was connected to global events much earlier than commonly believed. This online theory, whether historically accurate or not, opened a question in many people's minds. What other stories might be out there? The modern era. A generation that redefined Korean. If the story of the Haegwi is a debated echo from the distant past, the next chapter of Black history in Korea is a story that couldn't be ignored. It began in the aftermath of the Korean War, a conflict that tore the nation apart but also brought the world to its doorstep. The arrival of the US military after 1945 and in huge numbers after 1950 set the stage for a profound change in Korean society. Among the American soldiers were African-American GIs. In a country devastated by war, relationships formed between these soldiers and local Korean women. From these unions, a new generation was born, a generation that challenged the Danil Minjok narrative. These were the first visible population of modern Black Koreans. Born to Korean mothers and African-American fathers, these children were living contradictions to the national story of ethnic homogeneity. In the conservative and traumatized post-war society, their existence was often met with hardship. Discrimination was often harsh. These mixed-race children were sometimes abandoned after their fathers returned to the US, with their mothers unable to bear the social stigma. Orphanages saw a new population of children who belonged to two cultures but were often accepted by neither. They were frequently bullied in schools, denied opportunities, and treated as outsiders in their own homeland. Many were sent for overseas adoption, largely to the United States, as part of a broader wave of international adoptions from post-war Korea. For those who stayed, life was a struggle. Their stories were largely silenced and left out of the official national record. And for decades, it seemed their chapter of Korean history would go unwritten. Then, one woman took the stage and made the entire nation listen. Her name was Kim In-soon, but the world would come to know her as In-sooney. Born in 1957 to a Korean mother and an African-American GI father, she grew up facing the same prejudice that affected so many multiracial children. But she had a powerful, soulful voice that refused to be silenced. In 1978, In-sooney debuted, and in a sea of homogenous pop stars, she was radically different. Her success was a revolution. She went on to have a legendary solo career, becoming one of South Korea's most respected and beloved musical icons. She performed at Carnegie Hall, and her song, Goose's Dream, became an anthem of hope for an entire generation. In-sooney's journey was a cultural earthquake. She forced a nation that had tried to make people like her invisible to not only see her, but to celebrate her. She humanized a history that had been pushed into the shadows. Her success was the first time the story of modern Black Koreans was written in the mainstream. Not as a tale of shame, but one of triumph. She later founded the Haemil School, a tuition-free institution for children from multicultural families, ensuring the next generation would have support. In-sooney's life proved that history, no matter how deeply buried, can rise up and sing. Why was this history hidden? Why was this history, both ancient theories and modern realities, so absent from the national story? The answer isn't a single conspiracy, but the construction of a national identity that simply had no room for these narratives. The main reason was the ideology of Danil Minjok itself. After the humiliation of colonial rule, Korean leaders focused on building a strong, independent nation by promoting a narrative of ethnic nationalism. Unity was the goal, and the easiest way to create unity is to emphasize sameness. The story of a single, unified people was a state-building project. This was most clear in the nation's textbooks. For decades, South Korean education was designed to instill the values of ethnic homogeneity. History was curated to tell a linear story of a singular Korean people. In this context, the existence of mixed-race children after the Korean War wasn't just an inconvenient fact, it was a narrative impossibility. It contradicted the main story. So, these stories weren't so much erased as they were never included. The story of mixed-race children was often framed as a social problem to be managed and forgotten, not a new chapter in the story of what it means to be Korean. This was amplified by cultural biases. Colorism, or the preference for lighter skin, has been an aesthetic preference in many East Asian societies, and this was present in Korea as well. Darker skin could be associated with manual labor and foreignness, things the new, modernizing South Korea was trying to move past. The experience of the children of African American GIS was the tragic result of these forces. They were the physical embodiment of what the Daniil Minjok ideology didn't account for: racial mixing and a disruption of the homogeneous narrative. Their marginalization was a form of societal erasure that was very effective for a long time. It created a society where many could sincerely believe in their nation's ethnic purity because the alternative story had been so thoroughly dismantled. The digital reckoning, the conversation, and the future. The panic in the title isn't about riots in the streets. It's something quieter and more profound. It is the slow-burning re-evaluation of a collective identity playing out on screens across South Korea. It is a digital reckoning. For decades, the official story was the main story. But today, a younger generation of Koreans born into a globally connected nation isn't just receiving history. They are actively discovering it. They are learning about the Hagwi theories and debating their origins. They are watching interviews with first-generation Black Koreans who share stories of discrimination. They are seeing the unfiltered experiences of Black residents in Korea today, who speak of both microaggressions and genuine connection. This flood of new information has sparked a conversation. For many older Koreans who were raised on the narrative of Daniil Minjok, these new stories can feel unsettling. But for many younger Koreans, the reaction is different: curiosity, empathy, and a desire for a more complex and truthful version of their country's history. The real story is the collision of these two worlds. It is the discomfort of a society grappling with the contradictions between its founding myth and its lived reality. This is forcing new, difficult conversations. What does it mean to be Korean if not just a single bloodline? If Insuni is one of the nation's most beloved singers, what does that say about the potential for acceptance? The contemporary experiences of Black people in South Korea are at the heart of this. They describe a society still wrestling with its past. They talk about the paradox of a culture that celebrates Black music, while sometimes marginalizing Black people. They tell of being stared at on the subway or facing discrimination. But they also tell of finding community, building friendships, and carving out a space for themselves. Their stories, amplified by the internet, are the final proof that Korea is not, and perhaps never was, a monolith. The old idea of Daniil Minjok is being challenged. The viral spread of this history isn't just an intellectual exercise, it is the growing pains of a nation evolving. It reveals that history is never truly buried. It lives in old records, in the songs of a resilient diva, and in the daily experiences of those still fighting for their place. The panic is really a promise. The promise of a new Korea, one that is finally ready to confront its own complexities and write a new, more honest chapter of its incredible story. Conclusion. The story of Black Koreans is a powerful reminder that history is not static. It can be rediscovered and re-evaluated. The online discussion is part of a national conversation in progress, challenging a deeply ingrained myth and forcing a re-evaluation of what it means to be Korean in the 21st century. This journey is far from over, and it raises a crucial question. As nations everywhere become more diverse, how do they balance a cherished national identity with a more complex historical truth? What do you think this digital reckoning means for Korea's future? Share your thoughts in the comments below.